premium account on X is required. I don't know what that means.
I'll just ignore it.
Right? I think we started recording already. Hey, Warren,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Hey, Will. Yeah, I mean, we're live on our streaming platforms, and which obviously happens every week, and post recording. It will be along on the website.
Yeah, for sure. And today we're talking about masterminds, which may not seem directly DevOps related, but it actually can be a huge game changer in the success of your career. But I can just say from personal experience that 999% of all masterminds are absolute garbage. So today we're going to talk about what makes a good mastermind, how to find one or create your own, and that
I
kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm super excited about this actually because I've tried to be in masterminds, and I feel like I may fall into the 99% category of my experiences. So I'm really interested in what you've done, Will, in this area and what that's actually looked like.
For sure. So let's start with for anyone who may not be familiar with the concept of a mastermind, I think it originally started with that book whose title just absolutely disappeared from my brain this very second. Oh, no, no. Think and Go Rich from Napoleon Hill. I think the concept started there, but the whole idea is to meet with a group of people um, that have similar goals, maybe not the same goals, but have similar goals as you. And the whole idea is you talk through your ideas, your thoughts, what you've been working on. And it's the sole responsibility of everyone in that group to just absolutely call you out on your bullshit. Because most of the time, the reason we fail to achieve our goals is because we make excuses, and that's all they are. Like if you want something bad enough, there's not going to be an excuse. But we all fall into those traps of of making excuses of why we're not going to continue to pursue this goal. It turned out to be harder than we thought. And so the objective of the mastermind is to call your fellow group members out whenever you catch them doing that and hold them accountable. And you have to do the same.
No, I mean, I really like the idea and the concept. There really is something. I was reading a study not too long ago about even if we know what to do in an emergency, something triggers in our brain where we fall back into some sort of native state and execute the wrong thing, even though in hindsight we know what the right thing to do is. Being prepared up front, we know what the right thing to do is. So having an outside perspective, being able to just completely share on every idea that we have or what's ever most critical to us gets a lot of. I think there's a huge strategy of success behind that.
Yeah, and it's hard to do. It's hard to be in a good mastermind. But this is completely off topic, but what you said just made me think of it. Do you ever get on an airplane and walk past the exit row and look at the people in the exit row and go, there's no way that MFR is going to be able to open that door if they have to.
Well, I'm not particularly known for my good evaluations like on surface level of people, but I assume that the flight staff are doing that check, and I do know that they
Yeah.
ask for a verbal cue. You know, are you okay doing this? And they have to say yes. But we do know that even verbal agreement is really passive, and
Yeah.
you almost want them to repeat what they're going to do in the event of an emergency. Because there was a video that actually came out not too long ago from a plane with a fire on it, I believe, and the passengers were all going back and getting their stuff, and it took quite a long time for an exit to actually occur. So, yeah, I do think about that, unfortunately. So, thanks for reminding me of that fear.
Yeah, my pleasure. When I was in the Navy, that was what a majority of the time we spent just training and rehearsing for disasters because it was a known fact that when a disaster happens, you fall down to that primal
Yeah.
monkey mind level. And so to be successful in mitigating the disaster, it just has to be ingrained muscle memory where no thought process is required. So we just drilled on it over and over and over.
It's really interesting that you bring up the muscle memory because the Olympics are on, and there is this aspect of you aren't in the moment thinking about how to execute effectively. You are always you don't have time to respond
Right.
realistically. You just have to memorize exactly the routine that you're going to do and execute on it. But talking about your Navy experiences, I'm wondering, did you have the benefit of some sort of group to prepare for those circumstances, or just regular run-of-the-mill activities that you have to do, like people that maybe not necessarily directly in your area that could give you feedback on, like, is there a group aspect to that? Thinking about the mastermind topic.
Um, yeah, in the military, there is a feedback mechanism, usually in the form of some senior officer screaming at the top of their lungs, "What the hell is wrong with you, boy?" So, feedback loop was definitely incorporated there.
And I have to wonder, like, were you ever on the receiving end of that?
Oh, many, many times.
Oh man.
Yeah. I can tell stories, but they're way off topic from the mastermind.
So the group is super important, and like who's in your group? And I feel like there's tons of communities out there that are like on Slack or Discord that you can join and maybe ask questions about what you're doing or try to get some feedback. But it doesn't feel like other people necessarily, like there may be some generous souls out there that will review your product or wherever you're at, your technology stack, your current issue. But they're not that great. So if we know that 99% of the masterminds, are not fantastic, aren't able to help us, how do we even get into a situation where we can find people that can provide insight into what we're working on and give recommendations?
Yeah, for sure. It's a curated experience, like a lot of the online mastermind type communities. It's the equivalent of posting your question on Stack Overflow. Best of luck in your answer that you get, if you get one at all. But the thing that makes a mastermind really successful is curating a personal relationship with a small group of people over time, because it has to be a small group, number one, because we all have limited mental capacity to retain amounts of information. But you can't form deep, meaningful bonds with a large group of people. So just for that reason, you want it to be a small group of people. And then it has to be personal, because to be truly successful in this, like, you're going to be talking about some stuff that is very uncomfortable at some point in your career. And you have to have a level of confidence in the group that you can be open and honest with that. Because if you aren't able to be open and honest, you're not going to disclose all the relevant factors that they need to help you make the right decision. And I've been in one group it's been 10 years now.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, but the people in that group, like, there's no doubt in my mind, every single one of us would lie to a grand jury to protect the others in it. That's how tight the trust level is in there. And that's the
Well,
only reason it's been successful.
we may need to cut
Well,
that out
not
of
the
the
only reason.
recording. I mean, I think it's a good analogy for how close of a relationship you formed with these other people. Do you find, is it like bi-weekly, bi-monthly, when you're meeting, uh, everyone sort of knows where you're at, like what's current on in your professional life, and when you bring up a new idea, they just know where it's next, or is it sharing your current situation and bringing in concrete questions or status, and that way they don't need to sort of pay attention and know everything about you?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. We meet bi-weekly, and the bi-weekly meeting is organized so that each individual has a fixed amount of time and a certain list of things that you have to communicate. It's almost like a Scrum type or Agile type meeting. Here's what I've been working on. Here's what I'm planning on doing next. Here's where I'm having problems. And but then we have a private chat um, channel that we use so that we post messages in between those and do longer form conversations in there. And then there's also a third option there. If something happens in your life that you either need immediate feedback or you need more time than what's allowed in the biweekly meetings, we'll do ad hoc meetings specific to that topic.
Okay. Uh, is there, just for context, would you be willing to share maybe one of your recent either realizations or what you had brought up in the meeting, just as far, for people that maybe haven't been in a mastermind before?
Yeah, for sure. The range of topics is not solely focused on careers. A lot of it has been, hey, I'm thinking about taking this new job. I'm struggling with this at work. Um, Thinking about launching this new business. What do you guys think about it? But it's been personal stuff too. Like whenever my mom passed away earlier this year, I made a lot of bad decisions after that and fell off the train, and they were super helpful and instrumental in calling me out and getting me back on track. Some of the members there have been through divorces, and those were extensive topics with getting that done.
Wow, I mean, it sounds like it's more than just the ideas of having a dedicated support network, not just like, I know people talk about it, how do I deal with certain personal situations? Where do I go? Who can I talk about that? But actually having gone out and found the appropriate group, we're calling them a mastermind group, but, by any name, really having a dedicated team of people to support each other, like, I can see how valuable that is.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's probably one of the big misconceptions around masterminds is we think it's career
Mm.
or business oriented. And it is because that's consumes a large part of our life. But um, if you're dealing with the passing of a family member or a divorce or something in your personal life, that's going to affect your professional life as well. So it's in scope.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I feel like, maybe you skipped over this. It must be so difficult to have found this group of people that you've been with for 10 years now. How did that even come to exist?
Yeah, I responded to a tweet. No, one of my friends sent out a. Actually, this is how we met. He sent out a tweet and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting a mastermind. Anyone who's interested, let me know." And I had read, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich and was familiar with the concept and had tried at that point a couple of online masterminds, and I'd tried like some uh, subscription based mastermind groups where you actually pay to be in
Yeah,
there. Pro tip: don't ever do that.
I know, right?
Um, and so I was like, yeah, we'll try it, and it really was awkward at first, and it was very, at first it was, totally focused on things that you would only say in public, like, oh, here's what I'm working on at work, or hey, I'm thinking about launching this product, and things like that. But then as we as we got to know each other better and became closer over the years, that's whenever things really started to like take this whole group to a next level and make it something that I just can't imagine being at this stage in my life without that group.
Yeah, I mean, I know now it's actually become a more common topic to find your job group, I think is now a thing. Oh, if you're searching for a career and some other people are too, you can bounce ideas off of them and it's more focused in that way. But I feel like it's sort of limited and people aren't changing their careers or their jobs so frequently. So having the context already of where you're at can be, I think, super helpful there.
Yeah, for sure. Like the long term, being with the same group for a long time is helpful because, just to use myself as an example, like they know I will jump on a shiny object and chase it all day long and then drop it and walk away from it. And so they're great whenever I come up with something. They're like, no, dude, we've seen this before. We know exactly where this is going. Go back to what you're supposed to be doing and quit fucking around.
I think we have a new alias for you for the coming episodes. It will be Will Golden Retriever Button.
Right? Is that a ball? Is that a ball? You got a ball?
Yeah. I just read this. Actually, he mentioned it, Napoleon Hill, in Think and Grow, but I don't know if this is true. Google says it was originally coined in The Law of Success, which is, I mean, more. So there's lots of books dedicated to this topic, realistically, and I think we see them in some sort of form. I think in the professional world, we even see things like guilds that pop up or mentorship groups. Or buddy system or whatever, but I feel like really having an intentional aspect behind it is something so totally lost. I probably worked in tech for 10 years before this concept even came up to me as something that could be done, and that is really surprising, honestly.
Yeah, I think about that a lot as I get older. Or, well, not, I am old. Let's just be realistic on that. But anyway, like, I feel like somewhere in the last few generations, we lost a skill set as humans that we had for tens of thousands of years, of sitting around the campfire with the tribal elders, teaching the younger people in the group what they learned and how to avoid those mistakes. And I feel like somewhere in the last couple generations, we've lost that. And I think that's where the mastermind is helpful, is it's trying to like reconnect that storytelling and close-knit group process.
That's interesting. So there's a psychological or sociological impact from our own evolution that actually drives the success of this sort of uh, group collaboration that by nature we're not focused in. Because I mean, I think you're right, because there's also something at the family level. I mean, certain cultures obviously focus more on that than others. Being an American, and I believe you are too, I know that's super underplayed, I feel like, depending on where your roots are from. I don't discuss challenging even business problems with my immediate family. It's not that sort of thing. And if I was looking for a new job, I can't really ask them. I mean, they may have some high level feedback, but like what my industry is like was never something that they would be able to really understand. I remember when I was in high school, my brother would ask me frequently, "Does that make a lot of money?" Uh, and I know after many years that that's not the thing he cares about, but it's very hard to describe your situation to someone that is in a completely different field with completely different challenges. So finding those people that you can actually work with um, on an ongoing way is, I feel like, a huge can be a huge win.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think the quality of advice is directly proportional to the context that the person giving that advice has. Like, I'm not going to go ask my family doctor um, whether he thinks that Terraform is just completely out the door because of their changes to their open source licensing model.
I mean, now I wonder, it could be a secret Terraform lover that you're missing out on that opportunity,
Right.
really. Maybe he's been thinking about leaving medicine and going over to software technology for the last 10 years and never really got that opportunity and needs someone to, push him in that direction.
Right. Can't rule it out.
The thing I'm thinking about is, since it's so late in our careers, that at least for me to learn about this, like why is it this way? You mentioned that we may have lost it in the last few generations as a society, but I'm like looking at the education system, even all the way through university. Like, you're very focused on, as an individual, you solve problems, especially in academia, right? There's concrete questions with definitive, objective answers, or at least a grading system in place. And I remember some of my high school teachers would say to certain study group cliques, "You won't get accepted to a university as a team. You go as individuals, and you won't get hired as a team to jobs." I feel like, from working professionally for a lot of years and also thinking about masterminds and how groups and our networks can help us, in our individual careers, specific problems, professionally, personally. It just seems like that's wrong advice. Like realistically, learning how to operate as a team in some capacity, not necessarily tied to your job, seems like a huge miss for our education systems across the world.
Oh, for sure. Like I've spent a majority of my career in early stage tech startups, and it's a team thing. 100%. You'll have the founder who starts the company, and then they hire a tech person, and oh, we need another tech person. Well, guess where that hire is coming from? Somebody that the first tech guy knows.
Yeah.
And even at the advisory level, oh, we need an advisor on the board who has financial experience with SaaS-based applications. Oh, hey, my buddy does that. Oh, your buddy, how convenient.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's a limiting thing for sure, because unless you're buddies with someone, your options are limited. But um, I think it is a good thing for bringing in known expertise to help you succeed.
I mean, there is a just recently I think we've learned of concerning bias where obviously your in network is people who are similar to you and who you hire through interview process of course is biased towards similar thinking. But yeah, I mean the startups obviously go the route you're pulling people from your network. Can't be helped there, and you would just be at a loss without that. You do need someone to fill that spot, and it's so much easier to evaluate someone you know than random people from the internet, of which 99% of them are resumes that were completed by AI bot now.
Right? Can you imagine what you would have to go through if you posted a job ad for like a CTO or an advisory board member on Indeed.com?
I don't actually have to imagine. So one of the groups I'm in actually talks about this. Some of the challenges where they have a new position open, even at the executive level, and how to find people. And obviously, the challenge is the higher up you go, the more concerned you are that they're able to maybe be effective in that role, and so you may be more likely to pull from your network, which is incredibly limiting. So focusing on having the appropriate network is critical for success. But even at the lead engineer or architect level, engineering manager, etc., you have a spot open and you'll have thousands of resumes coming in for people that are, according to the resume, are qualified, and that's a non-trivial problem to solve. There's some statistical models that say the 37% rule is what applies.
What's the 37% rule?
So like the most random number that exists is the number 37. And people
Right.
believe that the numbers like the numbers 3 and 7 are the most random because they're not 5, which is the middle, and even feels not random. 1 is first, 0 is out, 9 is close. And so the numbers 37 and 73 tend to be random. And it actually turns out that 37 is like part of the golden ratio there. It's part of the derivation. And if we're hiring something, I think it's called the marriage problem, hiring problem, etc. How do I know when to actually hire someone? And the strategy goes that interview 37% of your pool that you want for some pool size. And after the 37%, don't hire any of those people, but use them as the strategy for knowing where your bar is, what sort of quality of engineers you're getting in. Hire the next best one that's better than all the rest of the pool that you've sampled. And that's how, so, if you say, I want to go through 100 applicants, even though if I have 1,000 or 10,000, go through the first 37. And then starting with the 38th one, hire the first one that's better than all the other 37 that you've hired. And that's the strategy.
Huh. That's interesting. Seems like a lot of work, but hiring is a lot of work anyway. So,
Wouldn't it be nice to pull from your network?
right? Yeah. Speaking of which, I think that's a really important precursor to finding or creating a mastermind group that works for you. Is like, how do you connect with those people? And you have to know people, which means building your network. And I know for me, for a long time, I was not a fan of the word network because
Yeah.
it sounded all salesy and schmoozy, and I was going to have to make small talk with Bill and Ted on the back nine, or whatever. And so I had a really negative perception of network, but I don't think it's that way at all. I think it could also be synonymous with your work buddies, or even your gaming buddies.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you. I always shudder when I hear the word networking as a thing that you can do. I'm definitely an introvert by nature, and so that doesn't come to me naturally. That just you'll have some apero after party or something, and you can go and talk to people. So if that works for you, it's a great way to start building a network. I found I need to have some sort of strategy that works to actually start. So if I'm at a conference, I will go and specifically talk to the vendors. I find that it's been much easier for me to do that, and I have real questions about how they're finding the conference, whether or not it's effective for them, what they're doing there, what they hope to gain out of it, and I try to build my network that way because I may actually need to get back in touch with one of them for a product that I want. So that's where I start.
Yeah, an approach I used that I kind of liked was actually giving talks at conferences,
Yes.
applying for conferences, filling out the paper. And the reason I like that is because then I'm not going to the conference to network. I'm going because I have to give a talk there. And
Yeah.
then I give my talk, which introduces me to a lot of people. And for the rest of the conference, you'll actually meet people and they'll be asking you a question about something you said in your talk or something related to your talk. So now I'm not meeting strangers and having to make small talk or figure out what to say next or stand there awkwardly staring at my shoes. There's an automatic conversation starter there. And that's been super helpful for me.
Yeah, and if your talk is super controversial, you can post it on LinkedIn and have people, coming up to you and saying, "Hey, Will, I disagree with everything that you said."
Right? As you should, because I'm just making this up.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I think there is this aspect of, oh, conference speaking is so difficult. It's such a challenge. I don't want to have to do all this work, or I'm afraid of conference speaking, or I'm not far enough in my career or experience. I think almost everyone out there, after about 2 years of professional work, has done something unique that almost no one else has done before in that exact way that you're now qualified to talk about. And if you want to get accepted to conferences, you just think about what you care about. And I bet you can come up with a 30-minute talk which discusses that and teaches people about that subject. And I remember standing up at a conference and giving a talk on security, and someone was like, how do I become a security expert? Like you and can give talks. I'm like, well, I didn't really consider myself a security expert, but here I am standing up on stage giving a talk about this. You start doing something over and over again, and eventually someone may be like, hey, I want you to speak at our conference. So I think it's actually, if that's the strategy that could work for you, I think really having that justification for where to go, what to speak about, is for sure really helpful to expand your network.
Yeah, I think there's a hidden benefit there as well too, because everyone gets nervous giving a talk, and it's natural. You're putting yourself out there, but I think it's something that you have to force yourself to get through. You may not get over it, but you will get through it, and it's a precursor to having more difficult conversations at some future point in your life. Because if you're no matter what your life looks like, you're going to have awkward, difficult moments. And doing something like speaking at a conference where there's literally no no way to fail, but you get through that mental obstacle, it's going to help you build that muscle memory to have future conversations about difficult topics where there is a meaningful impact to not having that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not a lot different than sitting in a room with six people and discussing some sort of architecture or tool choice. Like when I'm standing up there and giving a talk, there's just the six people in the front row. It's hard to pay attention more than that, and the lights are blinding your eyes anyway. So it's not really like there's a lot of people. And there's usually a lot less people than are listening to this podcast. So as far as nerves go, that's not really super relevant. You usually get through it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's something you'll just get accustomed to over time.
How do you remember how you got started speaking at conferences?
Um, No, absolutely no idea.
Do you still get up on stage and get nervous sometimes?
I get nervous every time,
Yeah.
every single time. Yeah.
Is it noticeable?
To me, it is, but I think that's an important component of it
Yeah.
because, like, to me, the way I look at a conference and I view meetings the exact same way. In our industry, we can say that the value of a person is $100 an hour, just pretty much across the board around the world. Tech tech labor is $100 an hour. So if I'm speaking to 10 people for an hour,
Yeah.
that's $1,000 investment. So if I'm speaking to, you know, 100 people at $100 an hour, that's a significant amount of money. And so I put that pressure on myself, like, how am I going to deliver $100,000 of value to these people? And that's the way I approach giving my talks. So yeah, I am nervous whenever I go up and I have to deliver $100,000 of value in 1 hour.
Wow. I mean, if I was thinking about it like that, I don't know if I would be confident getting up on stage. I think you may have just scared some people away with that mentality. I think having something you're passionate about is relevant, and your passion actually helps other people is how I look at it. So when I'm giving a talk, it's usually from a place of like I really want to rant about something. Like I hear people doing something ridiculously in a weird way that I just would never personally approve of. Why do I not approve of it? Like why do I think that way? And then I evaluate that. I'm like, okay, I can actually say something about this topic. Whether or not it's the expert advice or anything, and it's just another idea that I'm throwing out there and trying to make a little bit entertaining for a group of 5 to 1,000 people at a time.
Yeah, agreed. And then, the way that that comes back is then you meet people,
Yeah.
people will give you feedback on it. Some of those will turn into relationships, and then those relationships will help you either form a mastermind or join a mastermind that they may already be part of, or whatever group name you want to call it. The name mastermind, I think, is just a easy term to describe what the goals of this group is, but you can actually call it anything you want. And there's probably other names for it out there that I'm just not familiar with.
I mean, I really wish I had support for some of the challenging decisions that I had to make earlier on in my career. Like, what is even the difference between these different jobs? How do I negotiate a salary? But it keeps on going further than that. Like, I don't know when I'm trying to solve a challenging technical problem who I can necessarily turn to. And I can obviously ask random questions on the internet, but I don't necessarily feel like other people are super invested in making sure I have the best answer that I could. And I wish someone had said to me early on in my career, you need to find your group where you can start asking these questions to that are comfortable and invested in actually giving you relevant answers. Because it's also a great way for you to find out what other people are doing. What is it like at other companies? Uh, how are they working on things that could be relevant in helping you figure out what you want to do next in your career or a challenging tech problem you've got?
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I only realized in the last few years was that I actually had mentors my entire career. I
Interesting.
just I just didn't know what a mentor was.
Okay.
Like I grew up in rural Texas in the 70s, and I can guarantee nobody used the word mentor there. So I was probably in my 30s before I ever heard the word and had a definition for it. Um, but in retrospect, looking back, there were a lot of people who were mentors in my life that I just didn't realize that that's what they were doing. And so I think I would encourage anyone listening to do that same retrospective exercise. Who was it in your past that's been trying to tell you what to do, whether you were receptive to the way that they communicated that or not? Thinking specifically back to some of my senior officers in the military, they were, they didn't have the greatest social skills, but they were trying to do the right thing. And so that's something to reflect on. Hey, the delivery of the message was wrong, but the message itself was accurate, and that can help you identify the people who have been trying to help you in the past. That may help you narrow the list of people of who to reach out to for questions about your future.
I mean, the dedicated group, thinking of them as all sort of peer mentors on whatever axis they have experience on, right? Whether because we're all have different careers in some way. We didn't all go to the same schools and get the same jobs at the same companies. That varied experience can be really helpful there. And you mentioned this to me actually offline a while back, and so I went through this little exercise, and I realized that my version of mentors out there were people at every job that I felt comfortable asking a lot of questions to, no matter what I thought the question. Like it was never like, okay, this is a stupid question. I'm afraid of having you answer it, but like I was always trying to get more understanding of what I was working on, like who I could go and actually ask stuff to. And the more questions I asked of these couple of individuals, the more comfortable I felt asking sort of maybe non-directly professional related or work related questions, things about salary, et cetera, and then eventually about my career and maybe personal life as well. And I never really considered those mentors, but looking back, it does really feel like if I had to coin that term for something, it would be people that I'm comfortable asking questions to and being told answers that I could then go execute effectively.
Yeah, for sure. And that process of asking questions is another one of those areas where it's uncomfortable at first, but with practice, it gets easier over time. And just like any skill, you become more advanced with it over time. So at first, you may be only comfortable asking one or two people
Yeah.
very limited questions, but over time you'll get better at that, and then you'll get a little more courageous, and then pretty soon, you're posting on Stack Overflow, whose stupid idea was JavaScript anyway, or whatever.
He's got a personal vendetta there against the creators.
No, not really. I love to make fun of JavaScript, but like it has done a lot of great things for our industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it was like an accident, the creation, like a 1 week thing to in the browser, and now it's something way more than that.
Right? It was an emergency patch to resolve an issue, and 30 years later, here we are.
I mean, I feel like that's actually what happens with a lot of companies and their software that they're making, right? Things don't die that quickly in some circumstances, and whatever work you've done can end up as that critical component in your company's software. And, I for sure want to have someone sort of evaluating the work that I've done, and maybe I don't have that peer in my current company that I can actually go to. And so I need to go out into the world, unfortunately, and try to find someone. And I just have to say, as like being an engineer, doing anything like this is super uncomfortable. Like at no part and earlier on would I feel like, oh yeah, no, I just want to go do this. Like if someone told me to go do this, I would definitely not. At least I would have been told, but it's just such a struggle. Like you say, responding to someone on Twitter after posting a message, like that was not okay for me. Like that was definitely something I didn't want to do. And looking back, yeah, like just do it anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really good point to elaborate on, is why bother doing this? Like why, I started off this episode saying it can be, I can't remember the exact words I used, but it can be a game changer for your career or something like that, which is just like a bullshit term. You can't actually measure that at all. So let's talk about specific measurable benefits to taking the time to curate your own personal mastermind group. Just using myself as an example, I directly attribute my mastermind group to the success of where I'm at now. And I measure the success of where I am now as having spent 3 decades in early stage tech startups where I have to keep my technical skill set above average for 3 decades. I feel like that's a pretty significant accomplishment. Working in tech startups, there's various metrics floating around, but an overwhelming majority of tech startups fail. But I've been doing it successfully for this long. Not all of the ones I've worked with have succeeded, but enough of them have where, like 5 years ago, I I just didn't have to work anymore. And I do at this point because I really enjoy my trade and because I suck at golf. Um, but I attribute that to having deep conversations with the people in my mastermind and them calling me out and helping me think through decisions that led to this. So yeah, I think some of those are some of the big wins for me of belonging to this group.
There's something really interesting thing that you said there when we call it like our network. So I'm not going to spoil my pick at the end of the episode, but there is something about your success is definitely determined by who your network is more than what you're working on or the promise of success there. Being able to share, getting someone else to even use your product or them knowing someone who could be your customer, that feedback on it is actually more attributed to success by your network, what your network looks like, than it is by any individual thing. When we say that all startups fail, some of them get lucky. That luck is really the result of knowing the right people. And you, by knowing the right people, well, how did you get there? One way is through starting out trying to find your group that can provide insight, but also potential customers, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another uh, potential misconception is that you have to join a network with already successful people. And I don't think that's true. Just, I think it's more important to join or start a group with people you're comfortable with,
Yeah.
and then you'll all grow over time. You'll all get better at helping each other, which is going to help each of you. And then it's like a compound interest type effect. So
I
you don't
mean,
have to join a mastermind group with Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. You can start with the people you know.
you actually shouldn't. So the research says that it's really interesting about who gets Nobel Prizes and how they detail them. And you'll find that the earliest papers by uh, Nobel Prize award winners is that they're not the first one listed on the revolutionary work that they're being awarded the prize for. And I think it's really interesting. Like your name is not first on that thing that you won the prize. So why isn't it first? And it turns out because often they were a part of the project, but then the rest of their career was still dedicated to that same idea. And they wrote more and more papers on the topic. And eventually, over time, they were seen as the cornerstone of success of the innovation that happened there. And so the original work may not have been by them, but it now is so totally attributed. And if you are in a group where there are two other people who, or one other person that's well known in any way, then whatever success comes out of that will be actually attributed to that person who's already been identified as the leader in that area. So you won't get success. You'll get some benefit, right? Maybe more money, maybe more opportunities, but it will never be your own fame, fortune, whatever you're going for, or personal enlightenment if you are joining groups just because you see high profile names there realistically.
Yeah, for sure. I think another similar continuation of that thought process is when you're talking about Nobel Prizes, I find it fascinating to look back 100, 200 years ago at the era of scientific discovery then, not only with people like Albert Einstein and the work that he did, but the group that he was part of. There's like pictures of him where he's standing next to like Niels Bohr, and these other amazing physicists, and they were just all writing letters to each other,
Yeah.
even to the point where whenever Einstein released his theory of relativity, he published a paper. Some, uh, I think it was a German physicist who was on the front line during World War II, plotting the trajectory for missiles to launch at Russia, on holding the line during the war. He had time to stop and read Einstein's theory of relativity, and then came up with his own solution to prove the parts of it that Einstein didn't know how to prove,
Oh,
and
interesting.
then mailed a letter back to Albert Einstein saying, hey, here's the missing piece for you, all while getting bombed on the front line during World War I. And like, to me, that was inspiring, because it's like, my excuses are no longer valid.
Yeah.
I am not reading Albert Einstein's theory of relativity by candlelight while getting bombed on the trenches of World War I don't have an excuse for not being successful.
I mean, it's with the scotch in hand. That's
Right.
where you need it. It's not a very long amount of work. Like it's a very thin book that's dedicated to relativity. So you can get through it fairly fairly quickly. No, I mean I actually found the collaboration between scientists to always be a very interesting topic of discussion, and I feel like something that gave a lot of color to it is if you've seen the movie Oppenheimer, there is a scientists basically collaborating and what that actually looks like. And I mean, obviously, is it super accurate? But it does add some flavor there of like not necessarily experts that are all experts in the same area. Like there have different specialties that are all collaborating together in some way. Now it does seem professional in nature, but there is definitely this in academia. You're passing back new ideas, and if this is something that's interesting, there's actually a video from Veritasium, which is a YouTube channel that talks about math problem wars, like wars between mathematicians, where apparently in the 18th century and earlier, you could have your position revoked from a institution if another mathematician challenged you to a math duel and gave you questions you couldn't answer, then you would get their position.
That's the ultimate nerdery right there.
Oh, sorry. I really appreciate this stuff. But there's something
No, it's
interesting there.
super
Like,
cool. It is, yeah.
I mean, literally, how you figured stuff out was one intellectual in academia writing to another one, totally unknown, or their descendants or disciples. Hey, they were working on this problem. What does that look like? Do you have any ideas? The same still holds true today, and I feel like the Mastermind Group really combines it together. And I have this problem, like I don't know, event buses with sending messages in some sort of network that things can be down. How do I even do that correctly? How do I come up with the strategy of Raft or whatever Bitcoin uses for consensus and go to town? Like there's not one person envisioning everything.
Yeah. I'm stuck on the whole math duel thing. That's just
So
fantastic.
the episode was actually about discovering third degree differential equations. So like first degree and second degree have closed form solutions, but if you have a third degree differential, then how do you get the root, the actual equation that comes out of it? And some people are like, oh, that's impossible. There's no solution there. And others will say, well, you can actually solve it for some situations. Like, well, if the equation looks like this, then we can come up with an answer. And so they start eliminating whole sets of problems. And so at the time, the duel was like, I can figure out solutions to these problems, but you can't. And then they always get surprised when the mathematician on the other side has to invent new calculus in order to solve those problems. And then the world, went further. And of course, keeping it a secret of how you solve these equations became a thing where I don't think secrets win out today anymore.
No, but I'm just picturing like a bunch of women like in a 1980s era Michael Jackson concert, and then the math nerd solves his differential equation and the women just start fainting and the bouncers are carrying him out at this math duel. pretty much figuring that's how this went down.
Like on stage. I honestly
Yeah,
don't know what the
yeah.
specifics were. I mean, I assume they were in their offices, because they weren't near each other. Because
No,
obviously
this was a
traveling
crowd
for
event. There were like screaming fans. There were groupies, bouncers.
he wants to say this is the 16th century version of like hacker duels and cracking uh, software run by governments,
This was like a
hacker duels.
Leonard Skinner playing at Bike Week type event. Sorry, I'm taking us off topic.
Yeah, no, actually, there's something that we didn't really talk about, and it's something that's been going on in my mind recently, and that's the idea of sponsorship more than mentorship. And are you familiar with that concept?
Nope, not at all.
So there's this idea floating around that just having people give you feedback isn't necessarily enough. You need people to sort of go and vouch for you. And so within your company, if you want to get promoted, having someone to actually say, not just here's how you get promoted, but oh, at the next promotion round, I will speak on your behalf. I'm actually helping you specifically. And I don't think enough people are comfortable. I think it's definitely cultural dependent, but comfortable enough to take the opportunity to actually ask someone to not just take the first steps, but recommend them or really help them actually succeed.
Oh, that's interesting because I've had this idea for a couple of years now. And my initial thought process behind it was the difficulty in finding qualified people to hire.
Yeah.
And it goes back to when I was in the military. Like I was a nuclear engineer in the Navy,
Oh, wow.
and to be qualified to operate the nuclear power plant, when you got to your ship, they gave you this big book and it had all these lists of tasks that you had to know how to do. And so you would run around the engine room asking people, hey, will you watch me do this task? And you would do the task. And if you did it right, and they felt comfortable with you, they would sign that line in your book. And when everything was all signed, you were qualified to operate the power plant. And then the reason that's tied to sponsorship is because if at any point in the future you screwed up doing that task, they would look at your book and see who signed off on it. And that person is partially accountable for the damage that you caused, or, the partially owned that mistake. And
Wow.
I thought we could translate this to the tech career, just to take like JavaScript, for an example. I'm not going to pick on JavaScript this time. I'm going to say like, you've got a list of things that are related to JavaScript, like writing an async await function, writing a callback or whatever. And so I could go to you and say, hey, will you check this async await function that I wrote? And you look it over and like, yeah, that's right. And then you sign off that I know how to do that task. And so then whenever, as an employer, when I'm looking for someone, I just list the tasks that I need and I find someone who has all those skills, and I can validate or see like who signed off on that and who signed off on it for that person above them. And so there's this whole accountability thing where now it's not just me saying I know how to do async await functions. I can prove that someone else has said I know how to do async await functions.
That's certainly the sort of thing that may be impossible to actually hold anyone accountable for.
No, I think it is, because there's another component to it that's a feedback mechanism. So if you sign off that I know how to do async await,
Yeah.
someone else working with me who has that skill looks at my async await function and says there's no way this guy knows what he's doing. So they dispute it and it gets revoked, but then that also passes back up to the person who signed off on it. So if you're just out there just blind signing a bunch of people for skills, then it's going to eventually come back to where you no longer had the ability to sign off on a skill, because that's another component of it. Is if you're going to sign off on async await for
Yeah,
me, someone has to have signed off on async await for you.
right. I mean, I totally get it working in any sort of military branch or public office. It just, in the tech industry, there's a short timeline for people working at the same job and whatnot. And I don't think people are often held accountable as much as they should be or realistically beneficial for the business as we want them to be. Because there's a lot of architectures that we fall into, that were there when we got there, and you're like, who signed off on this? And
Right.
I'd be really curious to know, maybe there's a product here, trace your art, your work that you've done, say that sort of a network. And I think LinkedIn tried this with giving thumbs up on people for recommendations for different technologies that they've got, but that's
Yeah.
since I've didn't really get anywhere, I feel like.
No, I think the reason that failed is because anyone could endorse anyone for anything. Like, I had a ton of recruiters that endorsed me for skills that I know for a fact they have no idea whether or not I could do those things. And so I think that was a failure there, is because the endorsement was meaningless because you didn't
Yeah.
know, like, who's endorsing this person.
Yeah. I mean, they want that so that they can sell your resume to a company and get paid, right? So,
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I know we try to do this at the micro level with pull requests and feedback through there, right? At least a second person in the moment who supposedly knows that, but that's very specific and doesn't really get it across of that you've learned this skill, someone has taught you, you understand it. And there seems like an opportunity there in ed tech going forward. Uh, it's It'd be really interesting if we got that to become a thing because it's a lot of merit.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work, like it's a lot of work for the senior people, to mentor the junior people who are coming in to take over their jobs. And I
Yeah,
think that's something we don't spend enough time and effort on. I think our industry is moving so fast currently that we can sort of wave that off, because by the time the junior people are taking our positions, the job that I was doing is kind of obsolete anyway.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
don't know that we can count on that being true going forward.
yeah. The future is unknown, right?
Right?
For
Right?
sure. So I feel like we talked a lot about in and around mastermind groups and the your experiences. I feel like you've got a wealth here that we haven't really dove into though. And I'm just curious if there's anything specific that you wish you had shared, unprompted.
Share it in my group.
No, I mean, what do people need to know about masterminds?
Oh,
I
yeah.
guess like today, I can say go and find one. But maybe there's something else.
I think there is, assuming that you're the type of person who has career goals and you have certain things that you want to achieve in your career, regardless of what they are, you're going to need help to get there. If you try to do it alone, it's going to take exponentially longer to do it. So find those people or curate those people that you can talk with, because it's going to short circuit achieving all of your goals. I think that's the best way to say it. Like,
Wise play
if
on a
you're
hard
really
note.
right, yeah, if you're really serious about accomplishing your goals,
Yeah.
stop fucking around and go find some people to help you.
I feel like, there's a lot to be said there because concretely understanding what your goals are is something that a lot of people push off. But if you do understand what that is, then next step is find the help, and it's out there. Like people for sure and want to help. I know for a long time, people messaging me on LinkedIn, I will for sure respond. You know, join the Discord server that I'm in and ask questions, and someone will pop up. If our uh, viewers, have questions, then we'll answer them. There's a thing, right? There are people
Yeah.
out there that definitely do this, and don't expect anything in return other than maybe they will have questions about how their thing is going and what support that you have in your personal sphere, your experiences that are unique to you and one day will become your superpower in a way that makes your experiences special.
Yeah, I guess the last thing would be who is it not for? Because that's always important too. Like if you're the type of person who just wants to work at your job until you hit retirement age, you're going to invest money the whole time. So you just want to do your job. You don't care what it is.
Yeah.
And when you're ready to retire, you're retiring. You're probably not going to get a lot out of a mastermind. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that plan. I'm not trying to say that that's a bad plan by any means. It's perfectly viable for some people, but if that is your plan, you probably won't get a lot out of a mastermind group.
I mean, if you think you're going there to somehow directly benefit yourself by taking rather than contributing, then it's not going to work out. Like going
For
there and trying
sure.
to advertise your thing or help me make mine successful, like is not necessarily the right mentality. It's does anyone have an idea about what I'm doing? Tell me why it's wrong. Is a much more direct path to success than trying to extract value so specifically. I think.
For sure. Yeah, you're going to give as much as you take from the group. Um, and the other thing is it takes time. Like this is not a Stack Overflow thing where you post your question, get an answer, and you go away. Like it's going to take you years to start seeing the benefits of this, but also years to build the personal relationships that are going to be required for you to have the deep conversations that actually have significant impacts on your goals.
I think you said this, like some of those conversations can be really challenging for you. Like
Yeah,
it's not like you ask the question and get the answer. It may be like, why are you asking that question? Like
right?
really diving into that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think that's something that's missed in a lot of superficial conversations we have. Like someone asks a question and you give an answer, but one of the objectives of being in the group is to understand what was the event that triggered this question. And based on that, are you even asking the right question?
Yeah, for sure. And if you're not an expert in that area, then you don't necessarily know whether you're asking the right question or not. So
Yeah,
having a group of other people to point that out for you is worth an incredibly large amount.
for sure. All right. And do some picks.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Bring it on.
Uh,
You were touting
yeah,
your pick before we even
yeah,
started recording, so I've been
yeah.
waiting for an hour here.
I mentioned this a long time ago, so you may know this one, but I'm gonna bring it up again. It's a book called The Formula by Barabasi. It's the science of success. So where does success play in, and how do you get there? And it's a huge number of case studies that have been evaluated and through scientific study, and we know things like your network is super important. So I brought that up that you may go to some conferences or get some jobs in some circle. And if you want a higher paying job that's completely different, well, you need to somehow get there. So knowing someone in your network to be able to help you make that jump is required almost. Uh, Statistically speaking, we don't make that migration ourselves. And it goes into a lot of different areas like the top song that shows up on the charts. Why is it number one? What keeps it in the number one spot? Why is the one at the bottom of the chart at the bottom of the chart? So a lot of different areas, and it really talks about human psychology there, how our network matters, and I think it's really relevant to the mastermind group concept.
Yeah, for sure. I would add to that one Napoleon Hill. We mentioned it in the episode here. Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Definitely a good read for understanding how this process works and some case studies of how it has impacted other people. Uh, Big disclaimer though, this was written in the early 1900s and he references some scientific facts that we now know are not true. So just gloss over that and say, okay, well, that's what they knew at the time, and we've since learned differently. But the process is still true because even though like in that specific example, even though their understanding of the laws of physics was wrong, using some of those same principles in the book was led to the formation of the groups that understood how the laws of physics actually are as we understand them today. So,
When you say that, I think of this show called QI. It's quite interesting. It's a British comedy fact show, and every year they have new facts that are relevant to some letter or some topic. And by like the 10th season, they had done a study about how true the facts were at the time that they were released, and then every year later. So the facts from 10 seasons ago were decreasing in truthfulness over time. And it was like exponential curve. So the further away from the time we said the fact, the more wrong it was likely to be,
right.
which I found was super interesting. So is that book your pick, Will?
No, actually, that was just a on the fly thing. My actual pick for this week is an application, an app called Onyx. I've been using it to go out into the mountains and track locations and mark waypoints and stuff. And the user interface on this app should really just be like a reference for everyone who builds apps on mobile, because pulling up a map and accessing coordinates and tracking your location, saving that data, and then you can go back to their website and log in, and all your waypoints and stuff are right there. uh, the app is so intuitive and easy to use that I just thought it was great and worthy of a call out here.
Is that the Black Stone? So like Oscar November Yankee X-ray, or spelled like
No, 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 no. It's ONX.
okay.
Yeah, it's ONX, and they have Hunt, and I think their other mode is like ATV or something like that
Interesting.
for that. But yeah, just super cool. If you're ever outdoors, you can download the offline version so that whenever you're deep in the mountains or wilderness or whatever, and you don't have cell service, it uses satellite GPS to continuously track your location on the map, so you're not actually getting lost. But it was just such a cool app. I had to share it here.
I mean, it sounds like something I should actually have, and I don't.
Yeah, if you ever go hiking, or if you're ever just out somewhere where you need to navigate, uh, I highly recommend it.
Well, I'm in Switzerland, so I do find myself on the mountain
Right?
quite frequently. Yeah.
Right? Cool. All right. Well, listen, for all of the listeners out there, thanks for staying tuned this long. I hope that you found this helpful. If you have questions, comments, concerns, you can find either Warren or myself on LinkedIn's probably the easiest way. I'm on Twitter every once in a while, or sorry, X every once in a while. We have the Discord channel. I think there's a public forum on the Discord channel. Or if you Google search for more than like 2 or 3 minutes, you're probably going to come up with my email address. You can email me too.
I'm sorry.
Right. So yeah, hit us up. Let us know your thoughts on this. Let us know questions you had about this. If you have future topics you would like to see, bring those up as well. Or if there's something you want to talk about, we'd love to have you as a guest on the show. Because that's honestly, this is my tool for navigating the tech space and figuring out what's relevant, what's current, what's changing. So if you're involved in something, I'd love to have you on the show to hear about it.
Definitely.
So, yeah, Warren, thanks as always for being here,
Yeah.
and we'll see everyone else next week.
Sounds good.